It's been such a pleasure to practice with you all this week, and today is day 5 of 5, and we're continuing on this theme, the poetry of practice. And there's a way in which poetry can highlight or emphasize, or maybe even like shine a light on maybe some of those dark and hidden crevices of our hearts and minds, those parts that we don't necessarily look at. Maybe we're not even intending to not look at them, but they just, for whatever reason, don't get seen. And this is part of the power of poetry, is that they help us to see them and maybe even bring some lightheartedness or bring some new perspective or maybe even some spaciousness, like, oh yeah, I hadn't seen that. And with that recognition of something new, there can be some delight or some openness or like, wow, okay, I hadn't seen that before. So that's part of the power of poetry, is to help us see what hasn't been seen, but coupled with this sense of recognition, like, oh yeah, that is there. I just was not paying attention to it before. So as I've been doing in the preceding days as part of this series, I'll drop in a poem during the guided meditation. But let's start with a guided meditation. So taking a meditation posture. Maybe starting by taking a few long, slow, deep breaths as a way to connect to the breath, to the body, to this moment. And there's a way in which the physiology of the body responds to deeper breaths, particularly longer exhales. Activates the nervous system in a way that promotes relaxation. So just a few longer breaths to support relaxation or some letting go of tension, but also to support our connection to the bodily experience. Tuning into the experience of sitting in this posture, whatever posture you're in. What is it like to be in this posture today, at this moment? Maybe doing a light general body scan and noticing if there are areas of tightness or tension or places where there might be some more opening, softness, ease available. Not because we have to get rid of any tension or tightness, just because this recognition that openness and ease is the direction that our practice goes. And part of how we go that direction is being sensitive, tuned into what's happening with an attitude of allowing as best we can, as best we can. Sometimes tension is very subtle around the eyes or the jaw, mouth. Sometimes the shoulders are raised up just a little bit. Tuning into the sensations of breathing. In a relaxed, warm manner with some care, respect for this body that's breathing. Is it possible to set the direction, the attitude of this meditation session as one of care and warmth, openness? Part of the way this warmth and care can be expressed is when we notice that the mind is no longer on the sensations of breathing. Can there be an attitude of, oh, look at that. Okay, let's just begin again with the sensations of breathing. I'm going to drop in a poem. You don't need to do anything with this poem. Just allow it to enter into the space. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to have a commentary. I'll talk a little bit more about it after the guided meditation. But during the guided meditation, just listen. I like wrecks. I like ex-junkies. I like flunks and ex-flunkies. I like the way the careerless career. I like flat beer. I like people who tell half stories and forget the rest. I like people who make doodles in important written tests. I like being late. I like fate. I like the way teeth grate. I like laceless shoes, cordless blues. I like the one bar blues. I like buttonless coats and leaky boats. I like rubbish tips and bitten lips. I like yesterday's toast. I like cold tea. I like reality. I like ashtrays. I write and like crap plays. I like curtains that don't quite shut. I like bread knives that don't quite cut. I like rips in blue jeans. I like people who can't say what they mean. I like spiders with no legs, pencils with no lead, ants with no heads, worms that are half dead. I like holes. I like coffee cold. I like creases in neat folds. I like signs that just don't know where they're going. I like angry poems. I like the way you can't pin down the sea. Sea. I like the way you can't pin down the sea. Sea. So hello again. Welcome. Welcome everybody. In the short little few words that I said before the beginning of the guided meditation, I mentioned that poetry sometimes helps us to see things in a little bit different way, or maybe to see things that we wouldn't otherwise see, poking into the crevices of our hearts and minds and shining a light, and hopefully in a way that maybe has a sense of recognition, like, oh yeah, I hadn't noticed that. So that's a little bit about what this poem is like. Maybe I'll read the poem, or maybe I'll make a few comments before I read the poem. So I would say, just in general, like this really broad brush about practice, Buddhist practice, this has a few movements, you might say, directionality towards greater understanding of both ourself and others, but as well as this movement towards greater ease and well-being, and this movement towards the diminishment and elimination of suffering. So all these are happening together, this with practice. And make another really big generalization, I would say that there's these two primary types of practices, like subsets of practice. And one is this cultivation, developing, building, strengthening. And the other is letting go, this releasing, shedding, renouncing. So we have both of these types of practices that help support these three different movements, this movement towards greater understanding, greater ease, and less suffering. So this poem, I think that helps us maybe with all of this. There's a way in which, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it helps with this cultivation and with letting go. So the poem is by Lemn Sissay. The last name is spelled Sissay. It's called Some Things I Like by Lemn Sissay. I like wrecks. I like ex-junkies. I like flunks and ex-flunkies. I like the way the careerless career. I like flat beer. I like people who tell half stories and forget the rest. I like people who make doodles in important written tests. I like being late. I like fate. I like the way teeth grate. I like laceless shoes, cordless blues. I like the one-bar blues. I like buttonless coats and leaky boats. I like rubbish tips and bitten lips. I like yesterday's toast. I like cold tea. I like reality. I like ashtrays. I write and like crap plays. I like curtains that don't quite shut. I like bread knives that don't quite cut. I like rips in blue jeans. I like people who can't say what they mean. I like spiders with no legs, pencils with no lead, ants with no heads, worms that are half dead. I like holes. I like coffee cold. I like creases in neat folds. I like signs that just don't know where they're going. I like angry poems. I like the way you can't pin down the sea. There's just, for me, I just feel so much delight with this poem. And maybe I'll clarify that the very last word, see, is the verb, like to see, visualize. So I like the way you can't pin down the sea, and that's like the body of water, the ocean, and then the next line is just see. So I feel like this is like an imperative. The poet is asking us to just see. And what is it that we're seeing? Well, maybe we're seeing all the ways in which we don't have unconditional regard for our fellow beings. Maybe we're seeing all the ways that our preferences like push us around. The things that we like and the things that we don't like, or we're always trying to avoid what we don't like and move towards what we do. And wow, how much of life's energy gets put towards or used up just to move away from the things that we don't like, or just even mildly irritating. And I have to say, this poem is, I just kept finding myself reading it over and over because I kept on finding all these little delightful things in it that I hadn't seen before. And I feel like this poet, Lemn Sissay, has this, not only the content of the poem, but the way there's this musicality, there's this rhythm to it that just feels like, it kind of feels like it builds up and there's maybe a crescendo somewhere in there. And of course, that's part of the way that I'm reading it out loud to you all. But there's a way in which it's written too, and where the line breaks are. It has this, I don't know, maybe some playfulness too. Maybe this whimsy that we can, allows us maybe to chuckle at ourselves, as opposed to maybe be filled with shame or something, to this recognition like, oh yeah, yeah, these are some of the things I actually don't like. And here's this poet just maybe highlighting that for us by saying these are the things that I like. So maybe I will say that this, with regards to Buddhist practice, I feel like this poem is pointing to both cultivation and letting go. Maybe this cultivating a generosity of spirit, this generosity of heart and mind that is more unconditional, that isn't setting limits on what our heart can hold. It isn't setting limits on what the mind can be open to. Instead, maybe the poet is pointing out all the ways in which we have set limits, conditions. Yeah, I only like this, but not like that. But I feel like this poem is pointing to the possibility of unconditional warmth, care, kindness. And maybe that's why the poem like speaks to us. I'll say it speaks to me, partly for this reason. Just it points to the potential for this unconditionality, this limitless care, warmth, respect. And I would say this poem is also, in the same way, maybe pointing to the same thing, but using different language. It's pointing to the possibility of letting go of our preferences. I like this, I don't like that. And this quiet expectation that we have that experiences, things, people please us, or at least don't annoy us. And then this openness, this acceptance really only happens when there's not a strong sense of self. When we've relaxed or abandoned or let go or softened this strong sense of me against the world, us versus them, I versus you. When that has been let go of and softened, then everything, something that we can like, take delight in, or notice, see, as the poet's using at the end, see, just to notice. So I would say part of the power of the poem is this unexpectedness, and maybe the sense of that it creates a sense of space. And when you hear the poem or read the poem, like, oh yeah, I don't have to say that I don't like this or I don't like that. So here it is. I'll read it one more time. I like wrecks. I like ex-junkies. I like flunks and ex-flunkies. I like the way that careerless career. I like flat beer. I like people who tell half stories and forget the rest. I like people who make doodles in important written tests. I like being late. I like fate. I like the way teeth grate. I like laceless shoes, cordless blues. I like the one-bar blues. I like buttonless coats and leaky boats. I like rubbish tips and bitten lips. I like yesterday's toast. I like cold tea. I like reality. I like ashtrays. I write and like crap plays. I like curtains that don't quite shut. I like bread knives that don't quite cut. I like rips in blue jeans. I like people who can't say what they mean. I like spiders with no legs, pencils with no lead, ants with no heads, worms that are half dead. I like holes. I like coffee cold. I like creases and neat folds. I like signs that just don't know where they're going. I like angry poems. I like the way you can't pin down the sea. Sea. I don't know. I have just a feeling of delight, and I'd like to share this delight with you. And then maybe I will end our time together, these 5 days of practice, the poetry of practice, with another poem that I'd like to leave you with. This is a poem that also has some playfulness in it, some whimsy, but maybe some encouragement too, to help us practice with this unconditional noticing, this unconditional care, this unconditional warmth to fellow beings, fellow situations, to whatever life brings us. So this poem is called On International Kindness Day by Rosemary Trommer. Again, I'll say it's called On International Kindness Day by Rosemary Trommer. And it goes like this. Kindness went out and got itself a new engine, a twin-turbo premium unleaded V6 cylinder engine, something with real oomph, something that provides a bit of giddy up when the going gets tough. Turns out kindness likes horsepower, a lot of horsepower. Plus, it sprung for direct fuel injection to maximize its power output. Everyone thinks kindness prefers things quiet and calm, but kindness is ready for action, ready to take on the world, ready to travel every back road, every highway, every main street, and get this ever-loving show on the road. There's a whole lot of work to do. I love this, kind of this idea, right, of kindness going out and getting a new engine. And maybe that's what practice is about. Maybe practice is about getting a new engine for kindness. Kindness for ourselves and kindness for others. With some of this unconditionality sprinkled in there. Maybe I'll read this poem a second time. It's On International Kindness Day by Rosemary Trommer. Kindness went out and got itself a new engine, a twin-turbo premium unleaded V6 cylinder engine, something with real oomph, something that provides a bit of giddy up when the going gets tough. Turns out kindness likes horsepower, a lot of horsepower. Plus, it sprung for direct fuel injection to maximize its power output. Everyone thinks kindness prefers things quiet and calm, but kindness is ready for action, ready to take on the world, ready to travel every back road, every highway, every main street, and get this ever-loving show on the road. There's a whole lot of work to do. And with that, I'll end our time together. Thank you. Thank you for your practice and for allowing me to join this Sangha for these days. Thank you.